ready for the interview. And if you get a cue live on the laptop, watch what I'm gonna do. Welcome to the show, let them know we got a point of view. Hey, yo, let's have a combo. Say what you feel, be real, that's the motto. Real talk pronto, Dr. D, PhD, hit an intro. Hold up, wait, gotta be social. Network global, a home for the local. Gotta be social. Network global, a home for the local.
All right, Simon, always a pleasure, man. The boys are back again.
The boys are back in town. I'll drink
Looks
to
like
that.
You drink to that. Looks like you're feeling much better, which is great.
I am. It's night and day. You know, I just recently got back from the gym and whew, recouping from the Epstein bar takes so long for me, you know, in my personal case of it. And anyway, so I got home and I was telling my kids, I was like, you know, the workout I did today would have been a warm up and it, you know, when I'm feeling good, but it just kicked my butt so bad, you know.
It's understandable.
So yeah, still recouping, but feeling way better.
Good. Well, you look, your color looks good. Everything's great. And you know, Trump got indicted. He got it on all 34 counts. He's guilty.
That must be why I've been looking so healthy.
I only talk about this stuff with you online, just so you know.
That's so funny. You know, somebody who I just, as a human being, I just respect the hell out of. And they're a friend that we have here, and they're helpful and kind and thoughtful and all these kind of things. But immediately after, you know, the ruling came down, you know, this individual posted on their social media, "I'm more MAGA now than ever." And I'm just like,
wow.
It just goes to show that even the best people, you know, can get really brainwashed by bullshit, you know?
True. Yeah. And actually, I think it's kind of like, even just talking about it, it's funny how people take things, and it's a human condition thing of that. If you're for something and somebody questions it or offends it, you dig deeper into it. It's not like, oh, you've seen the light. You go deeper into it. It's just very strange thing that people do. You know?
I've been having this experience, this exact experience that you're describing. I've been having over and over in the past, you know, month or two, and with people who I'm very close with. And just a couple of days ago, I had a 3-hour conversation with somebody on the phone, and it was, you know, I'm doing my nightly walk. I walk Eeyore, and the goal each night is at least 3 miles. Normally it takes like an hour or so, you know, whatever. But anyway, so I intended to speak with this person during that duration, but I ended up just keep walking, and I ended up talking for 3 hours and debating several things about religious questions specific to Mormonism, but most of them could be generalized into general Christian, you know, points and everything. And what I was trying to help this person see is not that I am definitively right and they are definitively wrong, but that there is a lot more nuance to their argument, to the things that they were arguing, than they wanted to admit. They wanted it to be black and white. And I was trying to demonstrate that it's all shades of gray. But the more I tried to demonstrate nuance, and that once again, not that I am right, but that they are not unequivocally right either. So both of us are probably wrong, in other words, but we're just wrong in the subtleties of all these things. But yeah, the more we talked, the more that they would just dig in, and they would end up, you know, over and over again, just like bearing their testimony, you know?
Yeah.
There's no polite way to say it. And so I always just say, you know, to people, listen, your testimony's bunk. Yeah. I mean, it is. Because your testimony won't hold up in court because your testimony is based on I feel. Feelings don't hold up in court.
No.
So the difference between what they were arguing and what I was arguing is that every point that I was making was verifiable. You can open your Bible and see that what I said, the Bible said, is right. But they were saying, no, I don't believe that. I was like, and I would invite them over and over. It's like, well, go ahead and open the Bible. It's right there. You don't have to believe me. I am not asking you to believe me. I am not telling you to believe me. I'm not telling you that, oh, I feel this so strongly, so it must be true. I'm saying you can open the book and read it for yourself.
Yeah.
And like, well, I just don't believe it says that. I just don't believe you. Like, who the hell cares what you believe? Open the Bible and read it, my friend. You can believe whatever you want about what you think the Bible says. Just open it up to the chapter and verse and read it. And then you'll know that you were incorrect and that I was correct about what the Bible is saying. Now, your interpretation of that, what the Bible's saying, might be different. And that's when we talk about nuance and all these different things. We might have to look further into the when and the where and the how this particular scripture was written. And we might have to, search deeper into that. But just to say, oh, I don't believe the Bible says that because you don't think that's true. Well,
It's hard
I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say it, but all I can think of are expletives,
Well, you know what, I think you may find this interesting. And as a disclaimer, when I say this is not meant to be mean or nasty. I'm not a mean person. That's not my thing. This is factual information. And one of the things I've been thinking about is like, what's the disconnect with, and this isn't just politics and anything, politics, religion, medicine, whatever it is, healthcare. What is the disconnect, this cognitive dissonance of explaining something to someone and they just can't get out of their way about like, oh, the light bulb doesn't go on. But, factually speaking, we know statistically in the United States that a good 15% of our population has an IQ like 80 or below. All right. So again, this is not a disparaging remark. This is just reality, what happens. And I often wonder, is it that sometimes we say, well, we can't get these people out of this mindset, but what if they can't get out of the mindset because they just actually can't? Like they don't have the mental processing power to actually know they're in this situation or to actually think critically from concrete operations to formal operations.
I think that's actually a really kind analysis. I know some people might think that that's really mean-spirited to say, because in essence you're saying people are stupid, and not in the insulting way that we normally use that word, but the defining way. Yes. And stupid by definition is an inability to learn.
Right.
So if we can just strip away the negative context from that and just say different people have different capacities.
Correct. Yes.
So do you think, and obviously this is all speculative.
Yeah.
If you were asked the question, do you believe that that's more nature or nurture? What would you think about low IQ individual, generally speaking?
I would say generally there's some nurture to it, but I think there is an innate element to some people's processing. I don't know. I'm saying it like computer wise. I think it's just kind of.
No, I think that's a good analogy.
Maybe there is some level of the software, hardware just cannot handle the stimulation of the process. It can't compute all of the information and then use it and then create this theory or analysis about it. And that's not a slam against people. That's just, it is what it is for that. Like I do not have great processing power when it comes to math. Like I just don't see it the way someone who goes, oh, this trigonometry, this obtuse triangle. Like to me, I see it and it doesn't it looks really weird to me.
Hmm.
Whereas
It's
someone
a
else
foreign
sees it, it's
language.
foreign to me. And as much as I
Yeah.
try, and I've gotten so much tutoring and stuff, different math, calculus doesn't make sense to me. None of that stuff makes sense to me, no matter what I've done. There's a processing issue for me, how my brain understands this. And I don't think we're assigning this enough to these type of extreme behaviors. Maybe it's a processing issue. Again, I know that sounds bad, but I don't think it is, though.
I don't think it is either because, we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And I think
Right.
that's just readily apparent. Not everybody's equal in every way.
Right.
I'm not, I don't know why Bo Jackson first came to mind, but he was an all-around athlete. He's playing football, baseball, and
Yeah.
and he's pretending to play guitar with Bo Diddley. But
Right.
but I'm saying I don't have that athletic aptitude to ever become a Bo Jackson.
Right.
I can train as hard as I want. I can hire the best coaches on the planet. I'm not going to be Bo Jackson.
Right.
Or anybody of that elite caliber. It's just not going to happen. I can get as good as I can get,
Yes.
but
Yes.
that's not going to be at the same level. It's just not.
Right. So
Maybe
this is the same thing we're talking about, right? This is
yeah.
maybe when you're talking to someone, one of the realizations you may get, instead of shouting with people back and forth and getting these whipped up things, is to realize, like, maybe this isn't, I can't really engage with this person, because if I'm giving them something really formalized operations, the hypothetical, what about this, about this? What if this didn't happen? And they just go, well, it didn't happen. Well, this is what it is. I immediately know we can't have a higher level conversation about this, because they just don't have the processing power to do that.
And once again, I'm going to say I think that's a really kind. There's a really benevolent way to look at it, because the alternative that most of us, including myself included, go to is like, man, why are you such an idiot?
Yeah.
Why can't you just see the things the way I see
Yeah.
them?
Right. Right.
Which
Right.
which is a really selfish and self-centered worldview. Why doesn't everybody else see the world like I do?
Yeah.
I mean, thank God that not everybody sees the world the way I do.
Yeah.
And I say that not because I think I have a bad worldview, but because I really believe in diversity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we need a diverse, uh, you know, uh, uh, sampling of humanity in order for us to be able to progress the way that we want to in different aspects of life.
Yeah.
Shannon and I were just in New Orleans the other weekend. Spent like 3 days there, and exploring the French Quarter and going to different museums and things like that. And at their main art museum there, just outside the art museum, they have this beautiful sculpture garden. And by that, I don't mean like the plants are sculpted. It's not like
Mhm.
Shrubs being sculpted. It's a beautiful garden park, and then they have all these amazing sculptures made out of all different kinds of things, and all different. I mean, there's glass sculptures, there's mirror sculptures, there's of course your classic bronze and things like that. But just incredible, and the variety there, and the way that everybody's working in these different mediums, and they have different ideas, and all, I mean, it was so inspiring to me and to Shannon as well, just to see how many people are creating just incredible works of art,
Yeah.
just incredible. And it's even a little, there's a point in which you feel, at least I do, as somebody who's just trying to be creative all the time, you feel a little bit small.
Yeah.
There was a painting inside the museum, and I just stared at it for so long, and I was looking at every minute detail, and I was just so awestruck by it. And I spent the bulk of my time in the museum with that painting. And I was inspired by it. I was delighted by it. I was awestruck by it. And then I was also it was like this feeling of hopelessness that I
Mm,
will never create something that beautiful,
yeah,
that
that's right.
masterful. It made me feel so mediocre,
Mm,
but in a way that inspired me to get better, to
yeah,
challenge myself to be more. And I think that's what witnessing greatness should do. That's what Jesus should do,
sure.
inspire us to be more. That's what the Buddha should do. That's what all these,
Yeah.
great teachers and leaders should do. The frustrating thing that I have when I have a conversation with somebody who I will just go ahead and say it, I am intellectually superior to,
Hmm.
is that there is something I'm lacking in my presentation that is not inspiring. Sometimes it does. Sometimes I find the right person, the right kind of
Yeah.
individual that, my thought process and my ideas and my worldview inspires them. They might not even agree with me, but it inspires them to think a little deeper, look a little deeper. The frustrating part for me is when I'm dealing with somebody who I just can't figure out how to have that effect on.
Mm,
I can't figure.
yeah.
And once again, I'm not asking them to agree with me. I'm not asking them to adopt my worldview, but I'm just asking them to look a little deeper
Yeah.
and to not make simplistic, definitive statements as if that's everybody else's reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know where I'm missing. I don't know what but it's something for me personally to look inward and think
Yeah.
about how can I do a better job in my presentation to inspire others around me just to think deeper,
Right.
to look deeper.
That's an interesting way of putting that. How do you meet the communication needs of different people?
Yeah.
Right. And again, this is not like again, because I think that you and I both we really care about people, but you kind of know when you're talking to someone, kind of man, I want to be really nice about it, but like where they land in terms
Hmm.
of being able to have critical thinking. Right. Again,
Yeah.
not a slam, just like you feel it, right? It's like this is an extreme example, but I also think very relevant for time. Like I always tell people, like when they broadcast a TV show or an interview, often a lot of organizations will pick a person who is the most sensationalized person, or honestly, not the most intelligent person from a street. You remember those interviews, and it's always someone who has really poor command of whatever language they're speaking, or they're dressed really in a way that would not suggest that they have a lot of means or that they're something is off there. It's like I always say when I see somebody wearing the American flag on their shirt or a hat and their pants and their shoes, I honestly think very differently about that person because there's something missing with decorum and understanding respectfulness of other people's ideas and how that comes across to general
Hmm.
like there you just know immediately.
Yeah.
You ever start talking to someone and you just know this is not great. This
Oh
is
yeah.
this is you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
saying this well, I think. You can probably say this better.
No, I agree with you completely. There was an individual back in Portland who attended the same church that we did, who was really big into like conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
I bumped into him in the grocery store one time, and you're gonna love this because being a black person,
Mm-hmm.
he started telling me about how black people don't have a high enough IQ to understand, and to be able to compete with white people, and blah blah blah, all
Wow.
this all this stuff.
In Portland?
Yeah, I mean, and just at the grocery store, and nothing. I mean, it was like, hi, hello, hey, black people are dumb. I
Wow.
mean,
It's like
that's really like how it kind of went. That's not
wow.
much of an exaggeration at all.
Yeah.
And so you run into somebody like that, and of course, I could have stood there and called out all of that BS
Yeah.
and told him, what an ignorant, stupid thing that is
Yeah.
to say or believe. But I knew I wasn't nothing I would say would change his mind. I mean, that type of person,
Yeah.
you know, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can say, you
Yeah.
know. So it's just like, so I just very politely told him to say, well, I don't believe what you're saying, but you know, I guess to each their own. You know what I mean?
What's in
I'm
aisle
just,
5?
yeah, I'm just like, I'm just here for the cheese, you know, that's all, you know.
I
I
didn't
mean,
come for this racial
yeah.
weirdness. Like,
So, you know, it's just,
you just know
I,
though, you know, you feel it
yeah,
immediately. Again, I'm trying
exactly.
like you just know. It's not like you're all better and it's just like it's very difficult to try to have an analytical, hey, maybe think about it from this point of view conversation when there is like a trap, like the mind is trapped in its own processing deficiency for
Hmm.
that. You can't do it. And then there's the other side to me, which is the other swing, which is high intelligence, but making decisions purely for evil reasons and for selfish reasons. And this is the other side to me personally that you know better, but you don't do better because it enhances your life in some external way that even if you know it's bad, you still make the bad decision because there's some other reward for you in it.
That's perfect because, you know, one of the main points of conversation that I was having with this person 2 days ago um, was what Mormons call the word of wisdom. Are you familiar with
I'm
that?
not familiar.
I think we've taught, but maybe not. So anyway, it's basically a health code. It was Mormons, of course, believe that it was given to Joseph Smith directly by revelation from God. And basically it's all the things that you think of when you think of Mormon. You don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't drink coffee, black tea. Now, however, that's just part of it. Those are the don't do's. Now, the things that get ignored by 99% of the population, and that includes the Mormon population, is what to do. And it says, you know, to eat fruits and grains. Those are for the body. You know, basically, it promotes a vegetarian lifestyle, and it does so very explicitly. And the way Joseph Smith dictated it is, you know, God speaking first person. You know, this is what I want you to do. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but um, God tells Joseph Smith to eat meat sparingly. And then he goes on to say, and it would be pleasing to me that you only eat meat in times of cold or famine. So, in other words, when your crops won't grow and you're running out of food, then you can depend on, you know, butchering an animal as a source of food. But otherwise, God would prefer that you don't eat meat. That we use and not abuse animals. So I brought this up to this person I was talking to who loves to eat meat. And I brought it up in just a way I said, you know, I wasn't calling them out specifically. We weren't actually talking about their habits or my habits or anything like that. But uh, the the Mormon temples are very different from just like the churches where we congregate. And in order to go and participate in the ordinances of the temple, you actually have to pass a two interviews. One with the bishop who oversees your congregation, and a second one with somebody it's called the stake presidency, and they kind of oversee a group of congregations. So in that temple recommend interview process, you have to answer standard questions. And one of those questions is, do you obey the word of wisdom? So the point I was making was, I felt like I was saying, like 99% of the Mormon population is lying when they say yes to obeying the word of wisdom, not because they're drinking, smoking, or things like that, but because They're eating meat basically on a daily basis.
Mm.
They're in the drive-through at Chick-fil-A, you know. None of these things am I calling evil. I'm not telling people they're horrible because they do these things. But I am saying that if you are going to say, yes, I follow the word of wisdom, and then you eat meat on a very regular basis without any concern for how that animal was raised, butchered, etc., I think you're a liar.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you're lying to yourself and the person who's asking you that question. This person, who, of course, like I said, loves to eat meat and hates to eat vegetables, was like, well, I don't think you're interpreting that correctly. I was like, I don't see how you can interpret it a different way. You know, and I was asking him things like, what does sparingly mean? What does only in times of cold or famine mean? I mean, how am I misinterpreting this? You know? Um, but you know, to your point, you know, the more we talked about, the more they dug in,
Mm.
the more, you know, they became just really like a really bad lawyer, you know,
Yeah.
because they were like, what does sparingly even mean? It's like, come on, dude.
That's
And
really
then with the one that really killed me was they said, well, you know, when it's really hot outside, I'm not even, you know, really in the mood to eat a lot of meat. And I doubled over laughing. So I was like, you think that's what God meant? You think God has like, well, check the thermostat because if it's over 85, you probably shouldn't eat meat, you know? I mean, it was so dumb and it was so incredibly stupid. And they were accusing me of being the one misinterpreting, you know? I was just dying. I was just dying. So
Yeah.
anyway, you know, those are the types of things where it's just it's so incredibly frustrating to try and participate in a religious community that is just lying to itself.
Yeah.
And it's that is one of the most difficult things I have with participating in a Christian community, no matter what, you know, sect of Christianity we're talking about. I
Yeah.
mean, I've explored, you know, lots. I don't want to say most or all or
Yeah.
anything, but I've done a lot of exploring of what different, you know, types of Christians believe, and you know, and I'm just talking about the institutions, what they teach, and I'm talking about how the general populace of those institutions interprets those things. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I just there's nothing out there for me. There just really isn't. You know, I hate to sound egotistical, but I'm too intelligent for it.
So-
Does that mean, I mean, does it, but you know what I mean though? I mean,
no, but you could
you
take
ever
this
want,
into a lot of areas in life. You
yeah,
know, everyone's trying to interpret rules that give them favor, no matter what the arena is you're in. And everyone wants to feel like this is the right thing for me, but the hypocrisy is too many people are not interested in killing their own hypocrisy for that. And just
yeah.
like I was watching this great series on Netflix, highly recommend it, called Eric with Benedict Cumberbatch. Truly amazing.
I just saw that up there and I was thinking
Simon,
about checking it
so
out.
good. I mean,
Mm,
you would love this big time. And but without giving it away, there's just a really good quote in the movie that resonated with me. It's by Tolstoy, which is everyone always wants to try to change the world, but very few people are interested in changing themselves.
mm,
And I just was taken aback when Benedict Cumberbatch said this. And it's just between him and his son, they talk about this. And I said, that feels about right. Like everybody's trying to change all these things about society and let's do this and rail against this side and rail against that side, but very few people are interested in looking inward and going, maybe I need to work on myself. Maybe
yeah.
I'm part of the issue here. This is a fundamental flaw in humans. Fundamental from the beginning of time is this lack of giving two shits about actually expending the energy to look inward. And a lot of people say it. They say it. It's very pop culture to say, I'm doing the work, I'm doing the self-care, I'm doing that. But really, are you? But are you?
Self-care, I feel like, especially when you're talking about the stuff you see on maybe TikTok or Instagram or whatever, it's so
Yeah.
surface level self-care.
Yeah.
Because for me, self-care should make me less comfortable, not more comfortable. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes. That is so true. That is so true, Simon.
Self-care should mean I'm putting myself out on the line. In other words, and if we're just talking about intellectually, I'm testing my ideas to see if they actually hold water.
Yeah.
That's uncomfortable to be honest with myself and say, maybe the stuff I believe isn't true.
Yeah.
I mean, and especially from a spiritual mindset, when you've been raised in a specific religion, perhaps,
Sure.
or if you converted to that religion, you're very excited about converting to that religion or what have you, to take this honest look inward and outward, because it's not just about, here's the other thing about self-care that I don't like, is that self-care in our popular culture is very selfish.
Yeah.
What if self-care meant caring more about other people?
Right.
When we were talking about that word of wisdom, the Mormon health code, that was one of the points that I brought up. I said, what if this whole thing about eating meat sparingly isn't about you or me? It's about how we treat our environment, the world we've been given, and these animals that we're consuming and that we're using for our benefit. What if it's about caring for them? Isn't that Jesus's whole message?
Yeah. That's
You
exactly
know?
right.
So I guess when I'm saying like my self-care, the way I'm trying to approach my personal self-care is, how does my self-care enable me to better care for others?
Yes. Most definitely. I actually just did I do a lot of lectures on self-care, a very different point of view of it for different institutions and stuff. And my latest um let's say direction on this topic is related to self-care as a gift to others. It's
Hmm.
what it is about. And I'm a big firm believer that
I
um
love it when I say things you already know
I
and that
know,
you
stop
already,
telling me things I'm already
yeah.
doing, Simon. It's so annoying, that like but like I like telling people, have ever thought about it, the fact that when you take care of yourself and you push yourself to make yourself look inward and all these things, that it creates confidence. Other people get confidence in you. So like other people all of a sudden start thinking, this person really takes care of themselves. Like if something happened to me, I feel confident that they could help take care of me, or that I could lean on them because they're really working on themselves. As much like, let's think about you and Shannon or Michelle and I. Like as we age and we get older, doesn't your partner want to have confidence in the fact that you're taking care of yourself, so that if something happens with them, they have confidence that you have the mental and physical and spiritual, whatever, aptitude to be good to them, to be there for them? Like,
Yeah.
and then we don't think about it that way. We think about it selfishly, that I'm gonna be a better meditator because of this. And I'm gonna be better at the food I eat. And me. I'm gonna be so good. Instead of thinking, man, other people are gonna feel good about how I'm progressing as a human and that I can be there for them. They'll have confidence in me, type of thing. And that's a different way of looking at it.
Sometimes Shannon has felt like she's being overly selfish and not being a good mother because she is putting her own personal projects. Maybe they're creative. Maybe you know what have you. Her ambitions could be writing poetry, all these other things, and those things take her away from her kids. You know, sometimes you know, or so. But what have tried to convince her of over and over is that her being the woman she is, successful in the workplace, successful as an artist, a poet, a playwright, a performer, all these things. And she does spend time with her children. I don't want to paint that as if, you know,
Yeah,
she's
no,
never around her kids
sure.
or anything. But the point I'm making is that she's showing her children how to live. She's setting the example and a standard that her children can look to and say, Mom held down a full-time job and she wrote a one woman and performed a one woman show, and she's editing right now to publish her first book of poetry. These different things, on and on and on. It's just, it's shown it can, and I understand the mindset that it can communicate that those things might be more important to a person than their children. You know, there's a balance there that needs to be. However, I think in my wife's case, that's not what's happening. What's happening is that she's showing her children how to live a, a very successful life, how to take care of the shit you have to take care of, and then also do the stuff that you want to do, that you desire to do as an artist, or any other thing. You know, maybe you're a sports person, or it doesn't, but that maybe I'm trying to say you can have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah. Well, I think like in one of the most powerful things you can do as a parent is show your children that you like to achieve things outside of their duties of being your caretaker for that. Like seeing, like I always think growing up, I always loved seeing my dad was in the military for 28 years. I went to all of his promotions. I saw him do extraordinary things and with his time in the military. I saw his achievement. That inspired
Hmm.
me. I saw him as more than my father. I saw him as someone who was inspiring other people and achieving and moving up in his preferred line of work. And I think sometimes it's easy for your children to typecast you in the movie. And you're that character. You're always going to be
Yeah,
Nick Cage or Tom Cruise in this movie. I don't care what role you play. You're Tom Cruise. You're
yeah.
just who you play. And parenting is a lot like that. You get typecast as so and so's, parent, and
Hmm.
you put it in the name of the book, in the address book or your phone, Sophie's mom. This and that. Like they don't do anything else. They're just your mom or dad or something. Like I think seeing your parent accomplish something was really important. Was why, like when I won Trainer of the Year, I had my daughter there in the front row in the LA Convention Center. I wanted her to see me in that moment, to see like you can do something big too, or
Hmm.
that. But often,
Yeah,
like we just typecast different people and we level it down. And there's nothing wrong with whatever. Being a parent is an incredible honor. It's a great achievement, actually. To do it well, especially, is a great
yeah,
achievement because it's really hard to do it well. But that's something, at least my philosophy is, I want my child to know that I have other interests outside of just them, and that I have a life that I'm pursuing that interests me, of that caters to my ambitions and dreams and goals. And I want you to see me doing that. I want you to know that, and I want you to pursue that. For them, don't typecast me,
yeah.
for that.
You know, going back to your struggles with math, how would it be to have a math teacher that you never saw answer, a problem, or be able to work an equation, So it's impossible sometimes as parents to really, tell our children to go for it, to find their passion, to do these things, and then we're not.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of message is that sending?
Right.
So this morning when I got in the car to go to the gym, I turned the car on, and the previous child who had been driving the car left the stereo blasting, which can be annoying, except they were playing one of my albums.
That's right, baby. Never annoying.
So I crank it up even louder.
That's right. Hell yeah.
But that is the best compliment to me. That, like you're saying, I'm not just their father. I'm an artist, a musician in these things. And they don't just respect me because I'm their dad.
Yeah.
They genuinely, appreciate the work that I do as an artist.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's just a beautiful, wonderful feeling. And we've talked about it before. It's not like my kids are, asking me when my next album's going to drop.
Sure.
They're not like,
They're not fiending for it, man. Ain't no way.
but when I show them things, they're like, man, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. And, I'm not, I don't know if I'll ever be their favorite artist or whatever.
Yeah, it's okay.
But yeah, sometimes you're just too close to somebody
close,
to be their favorite artist. They're just like, well, that's awesome, Dad, but I really like, I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm totally blanking on all the latest people that people like, but
don't worry, I've been blanking on that for a while. Don't worry.
It's so funny because, I'm in that space where I make fun of people in my age group all the time who are still listening to the stuff we listen to as kids. And not that that stuff's bad across the board, but I'm just saying, like, especially like, hair rock and stuff like that. It's like, for me, that stuff's good for a giggle. It's like, putting on, Def Leppard or something.
Sure.
It's good for like a nostalgic kind of giggle. It's like, yeah, this is what we used to listen to. I thought this was rad when I was a kid.
Rad.
Yeah. But now, I've grown up and was like, yeah, that stuff's really corny. It's super corny. And it's not that I am trying to disrespect those artists and things like that. But I'm just saying that those things, they're really stuck in that era for me. Yeah. They did not graduate from that era and become timeless for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I make fun of all my friends who are still, like those are their favorite bands still. I had a friend who just sent me some photos. They went to like this Kiss convention concert,
Kiss convention.
And I'm just like, man. I'm just like, Kiss has like 1.5 good songs.
Maybe.
I mean, that's being very generous that they have 1.5 good songs.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, it's so funny that people are still nostalgic for.
That's the beauty of life, right?
Bad music.
Yeah.
Bad music.
Everyone has different flavors, tastes. But, kind of like, I want to get back to that because I have something I wanted to talk to you about with that. But I also think about like as a parent, you're achieving stuff is to drive this point home for anybody listening to this. And maybe you're listening to this and you're for some very controversial things, but think about your children, if you have children or your parents, and think about if they saw you going into that Capitol building and taking a shit on the floor, right? Or ransacking, destroying public property.
Yeah.
You think I'm just doing this, this is what I believe in, but somebody was watching you and your family do that. Maybe your son or your daughter was watching you do that. And you know what? Those chickens come home to roost later down the road too. When they ask you, why did you do that? If they think differently than you, right? This is the thing we don't think about. We think we're changing the world by doing stuff like this, but we don't change ourselves and we don't see the butterfly effect of our behavior. And that many times that comes home down the line in the most brutal way inside your family, not out in the public, inside your home like that. Like for a good example, and I'll finish it with this because I want to get back to the other thing. I think I may have mentioned this last time, but one of those guys from Jeff Sessions or one of these guys from Alabama who was a senator had mentioned that he lost his entire family because of his support
Yeah.
for Trump. And how deeply down the rabbit hole do you have to go where your children cut you off because of your insane belief system and you're still into it? Like, the worst thing you can do is give up your family for
Yeah.
someone who literally doesn't care about you at all. I mean, that's the worst thing.
No job is worth that. And I feel
No.
like so many of these folks who are loyal to Trump,
Yeah.
they're loyal to Trump because they think their job's on the line
Yeah.
as a senator or as a governor or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
They're going to get voted out because the MAGA base has
Yeah.
such a loud voice. But, and I'm not trying to say that those people don't believe,
Sure.
in Trump's message or things like that. They very well might, but if you look at the overarching uh, what's the word I'm looking for, progression of the Republican Party,
Yeah.
if you just go from Reagan till now, unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Unrecognizable, and not in a good way. In a way that it has deteriorated to, I mean, it makes me think of Charlton Heston and the getting hosed down in Planet of the Apes. It's a madhouse, a madhouse,
Yeah.
So anyway, that makes me very sad, having grown up, conservative in a conservative household and things like that. And Shannon and I were just reflecting on this the other day as well, where it's just like, she grew up same way. And to look at the Republican Party today and look at what we grew up believing it was in the 80s, like I say, unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Unrecognizable.
It's wild stuff, man. Just wild. So, I think it's a lesson in, again, it's difficult tying it back if you don't have the processing power to really understand the things you're actually doing. And because to think about the future, a lot of people talk about the future in sci-fi movies and conversations, whatever. But the hard part about the future is you can never understand the tsunami of impact that it will have based off of your decisions. Nobody thinks about the future based off of their decisions. They just think about cool shit they want to see in the future. Oh, this car's going to fly? What about the iPhone 20? Or are we going to have AI and stuff? They don't think about the future based off of their decision making. And that requires a higher level of processing, computing power to feel your decisions now and simultaneously predict it into the future and go, how would I feel if I kept this and my children didn't like me anymore? You have to have a whole nother feeling, a level of computing to have that conversation,
This past Sunday, I took a walk with a friend, and we got on these types of topics just a little bit. And one thing that I was telling them, that I would rather vote for somebody who I disagree with on political topics and everything, who is noble.
Yeah.
So, I would just say, like, let's just say Mitt Romney runs for president again.
Sure.
He's not going to, but I truly believe he's a noble human being. I don't agree with all of his politics, but he does come from kind of more of a Reagan-esque, republicanism that I recognize,
This is familiar.
and that nobility, and like I say, maybe policy-wise we don't agree, but you're a noble person.
Yeah.
And my question to all those who are MAGA supporters, are you voting for a noble person? Whether or not you agree with all the policy, are you voting for a noble person? Are you putting a noble person in office, in the most powerful office in the world?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm just like, once again, I don't agree with everything Biden does
Of
and
course,
says and everything like that. But I think he's a noble person.
of course,
By and large, he's not a perfect person, but a noble person. And like anybody, people in his family have problems.
of course.
You know, I
No
mean,
doubt. His son is
yeah,
definitely guilty, man. I'm telling you, it's like
yeah, I
coming up
know.
with this
It's just
trial,
like,
the gun trial. I'm like,
yeah,
man, the evidence is overwhelming to me.
yeah,
I could be wrong, but you know,
exactly. And has he maybe tried to protect his son? Maybe he has, but
maybe.
that's his son.
Yeah.
That's his son.
Yeah. You would do the same thing.
I would
Yeah.
protect my son too. I would do whatever it took to try and keep my son out of prison as
Yeah.
well. So I'm just saying, yeah, not perfect, but noble. And
Yeah.
at some point, this is just an open-ended question. Will MAGA supporters ever look back and recognize that this was a big mistake that, like you said, had butterfly effects, changed their party for the worse,
Yeah.
big time for the worse, changed the culture of the Republican Party for the worse. And they, the voters, are the ones who did it.
Yeah. I'm going to answer that question. I know it's open ended. I would like to answer that question. And
Yes,
I'm going to
please.
say the people who have higher computing processing power but make the other decision, they will say, yes, it was a mistake once it stops benefiting them over time. The other side of the coin does not have the processing power to do that, in my opinion. I could be very wrong. I just think it's just not there. And I actually feel the people who are, if you say, well, what's the worst side of this? Definitely the people who know better. To me, that's the worst side. The other
Yeah.
folks, it's just an innate aspect of like, what are you going to do? I mean, if you can't actually see over the horizon, or if you can't actually think about what would be on the other side of a mountain theoretically, versus, you know, like if you can't, let's say you and I can have a conversation about quantum mechanics, superposition, quantum entanglement, qubits, and the theoretics behind that. If you go, "Well, I can't even, like, no, that doesn't exist. I can't talk to you about something that doesn't exist." Okay, then you're probably never going to think that was a bad decision. Probably for some, whatever. Just take it to anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that high level. It could be talking about the inner workings of your healthcare system and deductibles and co-pays and I mean, literally stuff that comes on
Yeah.
in life. If you can't understand that, if you can't process that, you're probably going to think, well, it is what it is. I made the decision, and this is what happened to our country, and you're just not going to do it. You know. So to me, I've really come down to these two things. Maybe there's some nuance in the middle of it, could be, but I just, when something stops benefiting people, then they usually see the light, only because it stops benefiting them at that
Yeah.
point. And as much like kind of turning when we were talking about music and stuff, one of the things I'm so like, I get so worked up is this obsession with celebrity. And, you know, there's this quote like, yeah, be careful of meeting your heroes, you know, or people because often they're not what they're portraying, you know, like,
Yeah.
and this isn't a bad thing about to say, but I watched the John Bon Jovi documentary on Hulu like a month ago. I was very disappointed in what I saw, because John Bon Jovi, well, I mean, seems like a really nice guy. He seems like one of the more neurotic, obsessive, weird people I've ever seen on TV. I'm like, I don't want to know this person. Okay, just do the music.
That's funny. That's
My
really
wife was
funny.
like, he's like a worrywart. Like he can't relax. All he does is he's a strange dude. I was like, yeah, but that's what happens when you go inside the life of someone. It's usually never what you think it is. A lot of times these guys and a lot of people are just cosplaying the person they think you want them to be. I'm not into that, man.
Yeah, there's a part of me that is very sympathetic to somebody like that because of the machine that they have
That's
to become a
true.
part of.
That's true.
The pressure to have another hit, the
Yeah.
pressure to, you know, have ticket sales and all these things. It's not just your livelihood that's on the line, it's a lot of people's livelihoods that's on the line. So there's a part of me that's sympathetic to that, but I understand what you're
Good point.
saying. If
Yeah.
if you're just looking at it from an artistic perspective, then I think the artists who make the biggest waves, they're not trying to write the next top 10 hit.
No.
They're trying to do something that's interesting. They're
Yeah.
trying to do something that pushes their capabilities and the capabilities of the medium to the next level. And that's where we get our Picassos, our
That's right.
Michelangelos, our all these different kinds of artists. That's where we get the Beatles and George Martin, who are just like pushing the boundaries of the science of recording. They're just trying stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's not going to sound good. I mean, honestly, there's moments in Beatles tracks where I'm like, doesn't really sound good, but it sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where I think the Beach Boys have always outclassed the Beatles, is where it's just like the Beach Boys albums always sound amazing.
Right.
And honestly, there's some tracks in the Beatles where I'm just like,
Yeah.
sounds interesting, but it doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
And the Beach Boys managed to do both.
Right.
Be interesting and gorgeous every track.
That's true.
Just
Yeah.
gorgeous.
No, it's true. I think that, like, you made a really good point about that, Bon Jovi. I hadn't thought about it that way, and I thought, that I got to retool that a little bit. But on the same vein, I think when you get close to like really get close to something, and I think this is the good and bad of all of our technology, is maybe the thing in the past is you could see someone performing and not really know anything about them and just keep them in that picture frame and keep them in the light you want to keep them in. But now if your artist is always doing podcast interviews and is doing their own podcast and then giving you their opinion about politics, religion, whatever it is, all of a sudden that person becomes like someone from your town that you may
Yeah.
or may not like anymore. And sometimes I want to crystallize that. Like, honestly, this annoyed me so much. I'm not gonna lie. This is like really annoyed me. Like Terrence Howard, who's I really enjoy his acting and Empire and different like movies with Morris Chestnut and stuff. He's just a great actor. He recently went on Joe Rogan and was like a psycho. I mean, it was just like the stuff he was saying was so outlandish. And I told my wife, I said, I just wish I didn't know this about him. I honestly
Yeah.
wish I didn't know. I wanted to just keep him in this picture of in these movies. But that's the point. If you start to get to know people, you may realize they're not who you thought they were. I was like, oh, I would spend no time with them. I don't need to be around crazy people.
What's interesting is that even on screen, I got that vibe from him.
Yeah, right? Like little nutty. Like
I just got the vibe that he's kind of in his own headspace and he thinks he's better. But I actually haven't listened to the Joe Rogan thing.
Yeah.
I saw the little headline things, Terrence Howard, this or whatever. Honestly, he's not somebody I'm that interested in, so I didn't click on anything. I'm just being honest with you. It's like I just don't even care. Terrence Howard, he's not in my top 10 of anything. I think he's a good actor. I'm not knocking him on that.
Sure.
I'm saying that his work hasn't interested me enough to where I actually care about what he says about anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and I liked him in Best Man and The Wood and all these kind of like really celebration of Black actors type of shows. I really like that. I resonate with that. But I was just like, man, and I don't listen to Joe Rogan because I think he's crazy, honestly. But I really do.
Yeah, I don't have any real respect for Joe Rogan either.
Yeah,
I mean,
I just think he's one of these people like he may know better, but he's choosing weird stuff for gain and stuff.
Yeah.
I just think that I find despicable, but I understand the human aspect of that. But it's hard like when you're like, oh, I like your work. And then you learn about the personal nature and I'm like, God, I wish I didn't know about this part of you. It's just like, I just really wish I didn't know. Like, I don't know. And I think sometimes there's when you get to know someone a lot, you start getting inside how the sausage is made a quote, whatever. Maybe
Yeah.
how, maybe, I don't know. I don't need sausage and all that stuff, but like whatever the alternative plant-based thing is, whatever,
Yeah.
grown, however it's grown. Like,
Yeah.
I just like, I'm very like sensitive to that because I sometimes I'm like, man, why did this happen? Like,
Yeah. No, it is nice. It's great when you have somebody maybe like a Denzel Washington
yeah,
who's just, you know, just an amazing actor. Everything he does,
yeah,
he's amazing. Even if the movie sucks, he's amazing.
totally true. Yeah,
He elevates everything he's a part of, and he seems to do that in just like his daily life
it's
as
just who
well.
he is.
He
Yeah,
seems to just elevate the conversation at any time,
yeah,
and he's not somebody that I always agree with. Maybe
yeah,
he's a very devout Christian and things like that. We might disagree on a lot of our ideas of what that means in religion and
sure,
things like
sure.
that, and how to express ourselves and things like that. Doesn't matter to me at all. Don't care about that at all, because I don't care if I disagree with somebody. Once again, I care if they're noble. And Denzel
Yes,
Washington to me is one of those people who just he's retained his nobility
he's
no
retained
matter
his
how
nobility.
successful he's become.
Yes, that's the key. That's it. This is where I think Elon Musk has made a huge mistake in his life, is that he went from talking about colonizing Mars, SpaceX, Tesla, and then started to veer into all these cultural, personal things. I don't really care what he thinks about though. I just make a good car. Like you do make a good
Mhm.
product. And I think sometimes like when you become a certain level of fame, you think everybody's interested in everything that you talk about. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, no, no, I wouldn't come to you for advice about any relationship in my life. In fact, you're really bad at that. But I don't know anything about electric cars. So yeah, I'm going to listen to that. But it's just like this ego of like, I'm good at this. So you know what? I should be good at discussing these other things too. It's just like a lot of ego with that type of mentality.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, one of the things this person I talked to this past Sunday, on that 3 hour phone conversation, were very adamant about if a prophet of God says it, doesn't matter what any evidence to the contrary, and what, it doesn't matter. They just follow what the prophet says.
Yeah.
And my simple question was, of course, but what about when they're wrong? And they were just adamant about when they are speaking as a prophet, they're never wrong. I was like,
Oh,
well,
and what about
just
Warren Jeffs? I mean, all these people like,
yeah, yeah. And they don't believe Warren Jeffs is a prophet, but specifically, I guess if you just look at the Bible, let's only deal with prophets
sure.
in the Bible. The bulk of the Hebrew Bible, or what Christians call the Old Testament, is so often about prophets who are wrong. They have a very complicated relationship with God. They make bad decisions. Let's just take the story of Jonah. Jonah and the whale and everything, he's sent to Nineveh. He doesn't want to go. He disobeys God, he's like, and going in the opposite direction, blah, blah, blah. He's just doing everything wrong, even though God is talking to him, telling him what to do. And then when he's successful in his teaching to the people of Nineveh and they repent and God doesn't destroy the city of Nineveh, he's disappointed. I mean,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
he's these people are human beings.
Of course.
And I think that gets lost all the time. With this person I was talking to, I use the example of Paul.
Yeah.
Most Protestant churches they follow Paul. We've had this discussion
Yeah.
before. They are Pauline churches. Well, Paul's wrong all the time.
All the time. Contradicting. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, there's not only anachronisms in Paul's
Yeah.
writings, which is how a lot of scholars determine, well, this
Yeah.
wasn't actually Paul who wrote it. This was written later. It was attributed to Paul. But even in the ones where it is assumed that Paul is the author, and I used a very I was like, I don't want to nitpick. So I don't want to use like an anachronism or something, because that's just that could be nitpicking. So I went for the big thing. Paul thought that he was going to see Jesus' second coming.
That's right.
And he thought he was not going to taste death, but would be, in his own words, be changed in the twinkling of an eye from imperfection to perfection. So he thought he was going to be resurrected without ever dying. And the joke I always make is, boy, that must have been really awkward for him when he's getting his head chopped off. I mean,
it must have been really awkward.
It's like, whoops.
Really? Yeah, you're like, what's going on here?
But that's a big oopsie daisy. And he's writing that as God's representative.
Yeah.
He is, and this is canonized in our Bible.
Yes.
And in what most Protestant, churches believe is the inerrant Word of God. And here's Paul. I mean, we're 2,000 years later, still no second coming. I mean, Paul was really off on his calculations. He's just, I mean, that is a huge, major misstep in your scheduling,
Yeah.
So, I just bring that up. So I just say, so what about when they're wrong? And in this case, you can say Paul was kind of like a Warren Jeffs or one of these
or the Heaven's Gate
prophets
guys
or whatever. Yeah. Because they are preaching God is coming back now.
Yeah.
It might be today, it might be tomorrow. Jesus is returning now. Get ready for it. 2,000 years later hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And this person I'm talking to, they're like, well, I'm not worried about myself and Jesus' second coming right now and all this and all the bad things that are going to happen, but I'm worried about my grandkids. It's like,
come on,
people
man.
have been talking this way for 2,000 years and it still hasn't happened. Get over it.
You might want to be worried about climate change, bro.
Exactly. There are so many things more pertinent and time sensitive and all these things. I mean, the last thing anybody should be worried about is Jesus' second coming, because it hasn't happened for 2,000 years. If it happens at all, it might not happen for another 2,000 years. Just stop talking about it and live a good life.
Live a good life. Live a good life. There are other more pressing things that are literally happening underneath your feet right now that will affect your grandchildren, literally will affect your grandchildren.
Yeah, the last thing you need to worry about is the book of Revelations happening for your grandchildren. I mean, and once again, the book of Revelations was written as if it's happening, next week, next month.
Yeah, of course.
It literally says in the opening chapters of the book of Revelation that those who crucified Jesus would see him come again.
Right.
They would be here for the second coming. So, I mean, since the dawn of Christianity, these types of apocalyptic preaching have been so wrong. Yeah. Stop believing them. Just stop. I don't care if it's Paul or John or whoever said it. They're so wrong. Stop believing it.
My pastor actually did a sermon on this one time. It was hilarious. And he was talking literally about that. He was like, these are just foolish things that people do. Like, it was funny. He was talking about it. He was like, he said, you can cite so many different groups have said this. And he's like, it's just ridiculous, honestly, to be thinking this way. But it's a way of, I do understand why people do it, is it's a way to have power over other people and to create a buy-in. You got to have a hook. Everything has a hook, man. It's like, it's this product will do this. You know what? You have bad skin? Yeah. You know what we're going to do? This, and then behind the thing, they're like, this is bullshit. This doesn't work. Yeah. This guy has massive amounts of acne. It's like, but you need it, though. You need that.
Well, when you think about why Christianity took off the way it did under teachings of people like Paul, it's because it was a doomsday cult.
Yeah. There's a lot of that still. I mean, there's actually a lot of that still. I mean,
Paul and John and those guys, they were preaching a doomsday cult.
Yeah.
And very convinced, like every doomsday cult, that it's happening now.
It's so true. It's happening now. And now they're pimping it in a different way in like online cults, like the Sherry Shriner cult and all this stuff. It's just different forms of a hustle for that
Yeah.
that gets further and further away from the really beautiful teachings of Jesus. Just keeps getting further from that. And it's like apexing with white Christian nationalism, and they're like peacocking hard with it, and it's like so opposite of what, like the same thing you didn't recognize about conservatism. I don't recognize fundamentalism as anything like what Jesus is talking about. I don't even know what that is. That's like two different
Yeah.
things, and in their mind though it's very similar. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But they can't see it though, and someone has some processing power too. They can't, you can't see stuff that you actually can't see. Like,
Isn't that interesting? Uh, I always hesitate to tell these little anecdotes because I never want to set things up as like, oh, I see something other people don't see. It's
yeah,
like, no. Well, I mean, that might be true, but
yeah,
that is to also make the assumption that other people see things that I don't see.
sure,
Here's a good example of that, that the New Orleans Art Museum that we were in, and Shannon saw the whole museum.
yeah,
I might have seen half,
yeah,
maybe, because I just got stuck on certain paintings. One in particular, like I said, I probably spent like a half hour staring at that painting, and not just like from a distance, like taking my glasses off because I'm very nearsighted, and getting like inches away from the canvas so I could see the most minute detail possible, because I was just awestruck by the masterwork of it. I was seeing things most people who will just walk by and not notice.
yeah.
But the people who walked by and didn't notice the things that I saw, they saw more of the museum than I did.
That's true.
So you pick your poison sometimes, I guess,
Yeah,
and so, but probably what I was doing was more akin to fanaticism.
mm.
The only difference was I didn't believe that this painting had any power.
And
You know what I mean? I was
like,
like, I
what were the
wasn't,
stakes for it? Like you
yeah, I
staring at a
wasn't worship.
painting, it wasn't
Exactly.
like it
Yeah,
cost you an election, or it
exactly.
cost you
Yeah,
like some negative thing. Like
yeah.
that's there's
And
sometimes the things you can't see and you're blind to have really bad consequences to it.
yeah. So I like my version of fanaticism. Personally, it works for me. My version of fanaticism is to look extremely deeply at things, have them change me for the better,
Yeah,
but it is not a religion that I'm preaching to everybody else, that
yeah,
everybody else has to think and feel the same way that I do.
yeah,
Also in New Orleans, we went to this Indian restaurant. Oh my gosh,
man,
it was so good.
awesome.
Oh, the food was so amazing. But when we first got in there, Shannon and our friend that we were traveling with, Eddie, they immediately sat down at the table that the waiter showed us to. But I noticed all this amazing photography on the walls, and it was all photography of India people, a lot of portrait photography of these beautiful Indian people, of all types, not just like traditionally beautiful, but sometimes, dirty, beautiful, that kind of rugged pastoral
Yeah,
beauty. As I'm walking and I'm appreciating the amazing photography along the walls, I get to this one photo in particular, and I just start crying.
yeah,
I'm looking at this photo and I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm in a restaurant looking at a photo on the wall and I just
yeah,
start crying because it's so beautiful to me. And it's just a photo of a shepherd leading his sheep down a narrow street. And he has his like cane and his arms raised and he's holding his cane and he has this wonderful smile on his face as he's like, hello, take my picture kind of a thing. And I just thought he was the most beautiful person in the world at that moment. And that scene was the most beautiful scene I'd ever seen. And I'm just wiping away tears, and I'm just like, come on, Eli, get control of yourself, man. You're just here for the food.
He had an experience. It's like,
But those are the things, if I show that photo to somebody, I took a photo of the photo with
yeah,
my phone. If I show that to somebody, they're not going to have the same experience, not at all. And
yeah,
I'm not going to expect them to.
right.
And I think that is where my version of fanaticism versus the institutionalized religious version of fanaticism differ, where I'm here having my experience and I don't expect my experience to be anybody else's.
Yeah,
But the religious institution fanaticism tells you that if you're not having this experience, you're wrong
right.
and you're in danger of going to hell.
Yeah, it's a threatening experience. There's always a threat. The authors like Sarah McCammon and Kristen Kobes, I'm hacking this up. Dumez. Sorry, Kristen. You're not going to listen to this probably, but even so, sorry, you know who you are. But they talk about how this fundamentalist based fanatical version of Christianity is all about threats. It's all about threats. It's all about there has to be a threat to your soul, a threat to your existence. And if you don't follow these things, then you are in danger. There is danger, Will Robinson. We're in trouble.
Yeah.
And true kindness, true love doesn't put threats on people. It doesn't threaten who you are. It works with you and helps you and is kind with you and is peaceful with you. Man, that sounds a lot like Jesus.
Yeah, it sure does.
It's like
Where people ask him who he
yeah,
is, and he just says, "Come and see." He
come and
doesn't
see.
say "Follow me" or else.
Right.
It's just an invitation. Come and see.
Come and see. Yeah,
You know.
it's a beautiful way of knowing someone. It's an exploration of knowing love and kindness. I'm just really interested in that. I'm just like, and so when I see someone telling me they're into that, but then their behavior is the opposite, I'm just like, well, you're not interested in killing the hypocrisy in this. You're just, and
Yeah.
again, I think maybe let me step back and think about this because everybody uses the word brainwashing. They're brainwashed. They're brainwashed. And my thing is, yes, that does happen. But I'm going to go back to the beginning. But what if it's they're brainwashed because before the brainwashing happened, they just didn't have the brain power. So like it's kind of like we always think, well, people don't exercise because they don't have any willpower. But we never think about it because biologically speaking, humans are conservation machines. We
Mm.
don't do things a lot because the path of least resistance is heavily built into our thousands and thousands of years of biology. We do things to stay alive and to conserve energy, not always because I just don't feel like it today. And maybe the basics may be the greatest answer to most things, the basics.
Our body's always searching for its
That's
homeostasis,
right.
right? And um, it adapts its particular homeostasis to our habits.
Yes.
So one person's bodily homeostasis might be to be extremely overweight and unhealthy, but the body has set a new baseline for what it's comfortable with. And now it becomes very uncomfortable to leave that homeostasis. And we've had this conversation very recently, and you were talking about how you didn't feel good when you changed to
Yes.
vegetarianism.
Yes.
It's uncomfortable. The body starts to reject it, because we're leaving homeostasis now.
Yeah.
And that discomfort makes us, as we talked about before, it makes us reject change.
Yes. Well said. I mean, it's the basis for the inverted U hypothesis in sports performance. You teach an athlete a new skill after doing something the opposite way, and their performance decreases initially because it's new.
Mhm.
I mean, you suck at everything you're new at. Generally, you're like, Of course, newsflash, no one likes being bad at new stuff. I get it. And then your performance goes down. And then as you practice and you get better and you overcome that hump, me, those 2 weeks when my mouth felt really strange, and like my body felt awkward. And then I
Mm.
started going up the U again. I started feeling really good. Then I felt better than before. Like
Yeah.
it's that part at the bottom of the U that we don't want to go through. We don't want that part. We just want the high highs, man.
My youngest son is going through this right now with basketball, and I've been trying to help him change his shooting form
Uh-huh.
because, like most young people, he just had this terrible shooting form. He's like shooting from the bottom of his chest, and just, and this is what I, constantly talk to him about all the time. It's like, we're not shooting the ball at the hoop.
Yeah.
We are shooting the ball up and through,
Yes.
and that's the difference between that shooting form that you have when you're, young, and you're just trying to get the ball up there,
Just trying to get it there. Yeah.
yeah, versus now that he's 14, he's more athletic, he's stronger. Now we can really shift to a proper shooting form,
Yeah.
and he's seeing it. He's been struggling for weeks with it, but now he's starting to come out the other side where
Yeah.
it's not perfect, but it's getting so much better.
Yeah.
So much better. And now it's going to start becoming more natural. And pretty soon he's going to be a better shot than I am,
Yeah. You got to put in the reps, right? I mean, you have
Yeah,
to,
exactly.
and you have to
And
suck
I'm
a
not,
little.
and he is,
Yeah.
you know.
You're gonna suck. So, it's like just part of it, man. It's like that acceptance of not doing well is hard for people to take. They reject it. They're like, nope, I should be better at this pretty quickly. I'm like, in what planet does that happen?
Yeah.
Like,
There's a favorite moment of mine. Did you ever watch the movie Young Sherlock Holmes?
yeah, yeah.
I on many levels, I still love that movie. I think one of the most spectacular use of special effects I've ever seen is when the stained glass knight
Yeah.
comes out of the window. I think that looks better than most any special effects
It's pretty
that
good.
I've seen today. I think you can sit there and argue, well, it doesn't look real or whatever. It's not supposed to. It's a stained glass
Yeah.
window night. Anyway, I think it's spectacular. But there's this one moment in that movie where the Watson has just come to the school, and he's gonna be rooming right next to Sherlock Holmes, and Sherlock is struggling on the violin, and Sherlock goes to just smash the violin. He holds it up above his head, and he's gonna smash it, and Watson is like, no, no, no. And Sherlock just voices his frustration. He says, I should have mastered the damn thing by now. And Watson asks him, how long have you been playing? He says, 2 weeks.
Exactly. How dare you be
Yeah.
less time? More time. I mean.
But we have that impatience within us. Even those of us
Yeah.
who aren't the amazing, Sherlock Holmes,
Yeah.
we have that within us where we're so impatient to be able to master something,
Yeah.
and without understanding that those who have mastered something have been doing it, 10, 20 years,
Yeah.
until they've finally mastered something. And it just requires that kind of dedication. An Olympic athlete doesn't train for 2 weeks.
No. No, you're seeing the finished product, man, out
Yeah.
there, It's like, oh man, these guys, girls, they're amazing. I'm like, yeah, but you don't see the unglamorous nature of this, the tremendous amount of pain, suffering, getting beat up, the practices that nobody watches, and just the time alone getting better.
It is it's what most of us don't want to do, because it is a desertion of homeostasis.
Yeah.
If you are really going to become masterful at anything, you have to desert any kind of comfort, any kind of balance in your life. You throw out the window to become masterful at this thing. And
Yeah.
most of us don't want to do that, because we want to have just a normal, balanced life where we just enjoy ourselves. We feel comfortable in what we're doing. We're just enjoying the food we eat instead
Yeah.
of eating for performance,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever it is,
This sounds like the the premise to Batman Begins, Simon. He's like, you'd have to go
It does,
1,000
right?
miles for anyone to not know who you were, Bruce. And he goes and does this whole thing. You know, it's like I just rewatched that again. Actually, I was like, I want to watch that again. It's like-
Yeah. It's a good one, man. That's a really good parallel because he spends, I don't think, do they ever say how long he's gone doing it?
7 years.
I don't remember.
7
7 years?
Yeah, it's a long time, man.
So and I think that's a pretty, I mean, obviously Batman is not a realistic thing,
Yeah,
but
sure, yeah.
it's a realistic idea to think if somebody is going to go out and try to understand the criminal mind and the underworkings of the, criminal society or whatever you want to call it, and be able to acquire elite fighting skills, things like that, to be able to dedicate yourself for that extended period of time, and with that singular focus. And boy, how uncomfortable must he have been for 7 years?
Yeah.
Because
it's a long time, man, to do something,
And it starts out, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, it's been a while, but he starts his journey by first giving away his fancy coat, right, to the homeless guy.
Yep, and he throws his wallet into the burning can, and he starts running.
Yeah, and it's this beautiful symbolic moment of giving up every creature comfort that I have, and now I'm going to live the most uncomfortable way possible so that I can become something different.
I could become something different, right? It's like this breaking down of this person you were to become this different person, to come back and become Batman in this sense. I mean, we're all trying to become Batman, right? Aren't we? I mean,
yeah, it's kind of the goal, I think, for most of us, to become the Batman of whatever it is we want.
Everyone's trying to become the Batman of something, It's like
exactly.
Ra's al Ghul, and then you go there and become. It must be, and I think like this is actually, I never thought about it this way, and even like Liam Neeson before he started doing all those weird Taken movies. When he's like, you have to become more than a man. You have to become an idea to people. I just love those parts,
Yeah.
You have to be able to disappear and like you have to become bigger than a person. People have to like fear. The fear of the idea of you and and that's the whole symbol, the bat symbol. It's in the Batman with Robert Pattinson in the beginning, he goes, this is how they contact me, but it's also a warning. It's a warning.
Yeah.
Also. That's a different way of looking at it too, that they did. It's a warning. Like I'm coming.
I'm out here.
I'm out here. Watch your back. Like
that is a perfect parallel to everything we've been talking about because to what you were saying earlier, Bruce Wayne, he wants to change the world.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, he spends 7 years changing himself.
Yeah.
So we have the 7 years of preparation of changing oneself before the attempt is ever made to make any change to the world around him.
Right. Man, we're geniuses, that. That was just a joke, but wasn't. That was like a perfect wrap around, right? Like
it was
wants to do something. He's got all these feelings, these emotions. His parents passed away. He puts a gun into his trench coat and he's gonna go there and kill Mr. Chill. And he thinks that's gonna change everything. No way. It's bigger than that. And then at that point he realizes I have to change myself first. With the aid of, his friend, I forgot what her name is in real life. Jeez, Tom Cruise's old flame. Anyway, she was in that first one, and she really makes him question his.
The only real mistake of that movie was her being cast, and I'm not trying to hate on her. Yeah. I'm just saying
Katie Holmes. That's what it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying it was a really good choice to recast that role.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Maggie Gyllenhaal, I think, in the second one, but he realized this vengeance that I have I have to work on this. I have to work on letting this go. But when I do that, I have to change myself. And
Yeah.
that's what's missing. And all of these large institutional conversations, whether it's politics, religion, whether it's vaccination, whether it's fanaticism about sports, whatever it is you have to be willing to look inside to make a real difference. Whatever somebody's batting average is, or free throw percentage, or their platform is, or whatever it is, it really comes down to you. Like, you're being controlled by this other thing, but you're not willing to do anything to take control of yourself for that.
Yeah.
Right? It's
I
just
love it,
controlling
man.
people.
Yeah.
All these things
Yeah.
are controlling people without people taking power back for themselves, you know?
I mean, isn't that the classic despot, who is trying to control other people but has no control over themselves?
Yeah, right.
They don't have
Classic.
control over their own emotions and their ability to handle their fear and their anger and all these kinds of things, but they are determined to control other people.
Yeah.
And once again, if we take that back to our own religious upbringing, that is the opposite of Jesus, who is not attempting to control people, especially not via fear, anger, all these other things, but he is attempting to show an example of love, kindness, and charity, which he is trying to teach everybody. This is what the law of Moses was trying to teach you all this time. But the spirit of the law got lost, just like that word of wisdom thing. There was like, what, the spirit of the law of that law is health. And the person that I was talking to on the phone is not a healthy person.
Yeah.
And in fact, they had to admit that they are eating less meat because they had heart attack, triple bypass surgery, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I actually, that must have annoyed the hell out of them, because I was like, wait a minute, could you repeat that again, please? They were just like, yeah, I'm eating less meat for health. I was like, oh, so you're saying that if you actually followed the word of wisdom, you would have been healthier all this time? Oh,
that hurt. That's a deep cut, though. That's a deep cut to
yeah.
admit, like that's.
It is. I mean, it's difficult for all of us because, I mean, I go through the same thing. I love junk food. I love it. And as post 35, junk food puts weight on, pre-age 35, didn't have to worry about it. Never an issue. And now, especially at 46, I'm constantly thinking about that balance of food I can enjoy versus food for fuel.
Right.
And how can I make the food for fuel food that I do enjoy, and all these kind of things. But it is that thing. So we all have our thing. And that's why I'm trying to always say, I'm not trying to say everybody should be like me because I eat too many Doritos. I eat too much black licorice. I love black licorice. I could eat it every day.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, just those kinds of things. It's like we all have our things that we're working on, personally, and things like that. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you shouldn't eat that meat, and then I turn around and eat my bag of Doritos and a bag of black licorice. I mean, that would be just really stupid of me to do. But I can say, I can say maybe we can look more into, especially if it's something you claim to believe and you claim to follow. And I think that is one of the big things. I've talked to you about this before, but something like 15 years ago, I kind of made a promise to myself that I was going to start eradicating hypocrisy from my own life.
Yeah.
And sometimes eradicating hypocrisy doesn't even mean changing what you're doing. It means just accepting that what I'm doing is bad for me.
It's bad. Yeah.
What I'm doing is wrong, but I'm still doing it.
Yeah. And I know I'm doing it.
Yeah. And that's the first step, I think, in being able to eradicate hypocrisy from one's own self.
Yes.
The next step, of course, is to actually change.
The really hard part. All right, maybe we're not geniuses.
But that is that first step, and that is such a disconnect in the first step where
Yeah.
most of us are just lying to ourselves constantly about the things that we need to change in our own lives. Or maybe I shouldn't even say need to. Nobody needs to. Live your own life. Do whatever the
Yeah,
hell you
that's
want.
true. Yeah.
But if you are looking to become this better version of oneself, then change is required. And change doesn't happen until we're honest.
Yeah, most definitely. Man, this always is such a good thing, Simon. Seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like you're having a lot of these different types of conversation with people. And I do too, but not on this level with people. This is where I
Yeah.
come to get the real hardcore deep stuff, man. Like seriously.
It's tough. And I will say, like, I have very few of these conversations. I
Yeah.
want to have them. Like,
Yeah.
and I was actually laughing about this with somebody recently. I said, me being my best self tends to annoy the hell out of people
Yeah.
because I want to have this kind of conversation that you
Yeah.
and I are having, and most people just don't.
Yeah. It requires a lot of computing power. I'm telling you, like it's just not even like just intelligence, just like energy wise. Like you get
Mental
overheated,
energy.
mental energy.
Yep.
It's just like not intelligence, just energy. Like it requires a lot of staring down someone, talking to them, having different thoughts, listening, and more, not this, like you said, surface self-care. It's like surface conversation. It's if you're used to just like kind of the, hey, how's it going, Jerry? Blah, blah, blah. It's a real large leap to get into something really deep,
And
like,
I understand that completely because I can't tell you, like, it takes me so long to get through a book. It takes me
yeah,
sometimes so long even to get through a lecture I'm listening to
yeah,
because I'm pressing pause all the time.
yeah,
'Cause I read a line in the book and I'm just like, oh, I got to think about that. So
yeah,
put the bookmarker in, set it down, and I've got to process it. So I understand that. I understand the mental energy that it takes to process big ideas because I'm constantly searching and trying to do that every day, all the time in my life, and it really interrupts life.
yeah,
It really does. It
yeah.
interrupts life. To what we've been saying, it interrupts our homeostasis
That's right. Yeah,
because it requires so much concentration.
yeah.
And what do most of us want to do? Netflix and chill,
Just
right?
want to be distracted. We don't
Yeah,
want to like dive within. Okay, we're geniuses again. Okay, we're back.
yeah.
We're back. We vacillate in between imbeciles and genius. It's like,
Yeah, well, that's
you know,
that's being blonde.
it sure is. Yeah, well, oh, Simon, thank you so much, my friend. Again, this always a great time, man. Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. I always feel so energized after our
Too.
conversations. I just feel like I'm ready to meet the next week now because
Yeah.
I've kind of had this like purging.
You purge it. Yeah.
Yeah, and also uh seeing things from your perspective, which now I've got to feed that back into my
Yeah.
machine. Now
Yeah.
I've got to, like, put that information back into my
That's
process.
right.
And it's just energizing to now have that to go off of for the next week or two, until our next conversation,
Yep. For sure.
so
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for being my friend and for wanting to do this regularly. I really appreciate it.
I as well, man.